Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this wastewater section in the Higg FEM verification trail. I'm pleased to be here with you today, and I'm looking forward to spending more or less 1 hour together with you talking about wastewater. And my name is Karin Ekberg. I'm the CEO and founder of Leadership and Sustainability. And I have now more than 35 years of experience working in the area of sustainability and nearly 15 years of experience in the textile sector. I'm also a Higg FEM chemical specialist verifier and trainer, of course, and a BRM verifier. And pleased to meet you, and we will just dive into the agenda here. But first, let me just show you how to use the GoToWebinar and the control panel. So you are all on mute today in order to ensure the best audio quality. And but you are very welcome to send us your questions throughout the webinar via the question function. And you can see here on the screenshot, you open up the question folder here, and then you can write down your question and send it. So I hope that that will work. And if there is anything, please just send a message then via the question function. And you will also receive both the presentation and the recording after this webinar. So we will be sending you an email with all this information after the webinar. Okay, so the agenda for today is we will actually dive directly into the wastewater section. In previous webinars, we have been talking also about the verification trail and the steps up to the verification and posting your verified module. So if you are interested in learning more about that, it's possible for you to go back and listen to our previous webinars where we have explained that. And we will have time for sure for all your questions. We can also have a discussion, and then I will also present our verifiers to you and our company very briefly. All right, so let's go there to the wastewater section. And here again, as you know, in many of the sections of the Higg FEM, there are also applicability questions. And in this case for wastewater as well. So you need to ensure that you respond correctly here for your applicability. So the questions are, does your facility generate industrial wastewater? So of course, every facility would generate domestic wastewater, but not all facilities generate also industrial wastewater. So here it's important to respond yes if you actually do. And then do you have zero liquid discharge? We will talk more about zero liquid discharge a bit later in this webinar today, but here also zero liquid discharge is really when you have no discharge that goes out of the factory. But you have all recycled and all your wastewater is treated, so to say, on site. And then do you treat industrial and domestic wastewater together? So this is also important to know. Do you have separate wastewater treatment plants, or perhaps you are treating only one of the different types of wastewater? And so please respond here correctly. And then also, where is the industrial domestic combined wastewater treated? And here it may be on-site or it may be off-site. Or you might have, for example, domestic wastewater treated on-site and industrial wastewater treated off-site. So, once you have responded to these questions, automatically the system will give you the correct questions that you need to respond to. And as you know, you can always go also to the How to Higg and have a look at the guidance and the support to understand each and every question. And I hope you don't mind, but I will actually turn off my camera now just to make sure that we do have a good audio quality really. So I will be moving away from the camera. And now let's move on here. Here you see a typical wastewater treatment plant with several different steps. And I will talk a bit about those steps very soon. But you can see how the wastewater is entering here. Here comes the wastewater from the factory itself. You may also have a stormwater tank. that goes into the plant, and then you have pre-treatment, primary sedimentation, you have the biological process, perhaps chemicals, you have a secondary sedimentation, and then you also have your different steps in the sludge treatment. And when we walk through all these different steps, we have the wastewater collection, and the wastewater is collected via drainage pipes and directed to a central point. The pipes or tracks should be leak-proof, and the people offering exhaust services should, of course, use PPE, personal protective equipment, as well. Then the screening process. This process involves the removal of large objects that could damage the equipment. These items must be disposed of correctly. Primary treatment. During the primary treatment, macrobiotic solid matter is separated from wastewater. So those are bigger particles. So this process includes sedimentation, equalization, neutralization, chemical coagulation, and mechanical flocculation as well. And then we have the secondary treatment. And in the secondary treatment, seed sludge is added to wastewater to ensure the degradation of any organic components. This is done under aerobic conditions with the help of bacteria and microorganisms that consume organic matter. This process takes several hours and results in the production of large particles that settle as a sludge to the bottom of the tank. And in addition to the application of activated sludge, there are also some steps that can be included during this secondary treatment. So there may be aerated lagoons that you can see also on this photo here, biofilm, trickling filtration, oxidation ditches and ponds, etc. So there are many ways technically to solve this or to use this process. Then we have the sludge handling. The sludge that precipitates during the secondary treatment is removed at regular intervals and dewatered in a filter press, normally. The filter cake is disposed of, then the filtrate water is fed back into the wastewater treatment plant. And most of the time, especially if you have an industrial wastewater treatment plant, the sludge will actually be hazardous. And then accordingly, the sludge needs to be taken care of as a hazardous waste stream. But it may be, for example, if you are treating only domestic water, that the sludge is not hazardous. And so you always need to check what are the regulations locally in order to define what is a hazardous sludge and what is not hazardous. And the sludge is then disposed of, as I said, and the filtrate water is fed back into the wastewater treatment plant. And then we have the tertiary treatment. Similar to how a drinking water plants function, the tertiary treatment stage can remove up to 99% of impurities using one or several of the following techniques: oxidation, electrolytic precipitation, foam fractionation, membrane technologies, electrochemical processes, ionic exchange, etc. There are lots of different processes that can take place here. And usually these processes are more cost and equipment intensive, and but can be then adapted and adjusted according to the level of contamination that you have. And sometimes the treated wastewater is disinfected as well towards the very end of the process. And there is a really, really good resource available for you, and that has been prepared by the Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals, the ZTHC group. And this document is a document that explains all the different wastewater treatment technologies and steps. So it's a very, very rich document with a lot of great information in there. All right, and then now let us get the overview of all the questions in the wastewater section. So we have level 1, 2, and 3, as we always have. And you can see in this case, in the wastewater section, this section is very heavy, so to say, in level 1, because we have already 6 questions here. And at level 2, we have only 2 questions, and at level 3, we have only 1. So remember the distribution of scores in the sections. Level 1 has 25 points, level 2 50 points, and level 3 another 25 points. That makes it very important for you to make sure that you can manage all the questions at level 1 so that you can then move on to levels 2 and 3. Okay, so the first question is, does your facility track its wastewater volume? And we would really like to see that you actually measure and track your wastewater volume. Sometimes we see estimations, and sometimes we see perhaps not so realistic estimations as well. So then your total quantity of wastewater that was discharged should be recorded, the tracking method, the frequency of the measurement, the quantity of discharge points that you have. This question was new last year, and here you have to indicate at how many points do you actually release the wastewater into the canalization or into the whatever effluent point you have. So the quantities of your discharge point, the labeling of those discharge point, and then also any monitoring that you are doing, and what is the final discharge point. So several questions here. And then there is also one additional unscored question. This question was included in the Higg FEM 2020 as well, and it is still unscored now in the Higg FEM 2021. Does your facility have a mechanism to prevent wastewater from mixing with stormwater in the storm drain systems? And this is the case you saw in the picture previously. With the overview of the wastewater treatment plant, you could see that in that case, the stormwater was fed into the wastewater treatment plant. But very often you have separate systems as well. So the stormwater may be fed directly into the canalization and is not treated as a wastewater. And the reason is that usually the stormwater is just rainwater and doesn't have a lot of contamination at all. So usually it doesn't need to be treated. And here we have this question: in order to make sure that you don't have any wastewater, so wastewater from your factory, contaminated wastewater that is feeding into the storm drain systems and then potentially discharged into the environment without treatment. And you know that one topic that is not so commonly discussed actually in this sector, unfortunately I would say, and that is the problem of soil and groundwater contamination. So soil and groundwater contamination is a very, very serious topic. And if you have contamination of your soil, it may penetrate, it may filter into the groundwater and thereby contaminate, for example, also potable water systems. And a contamination is very, very difficult to clean up. It's very, very costly. Usually takes a lot of time, many, many years to do that. And that is also one of the reasons because we have this question here. In order to make sure that we don't have any leaks or any problems in our system that can cause soil and groundwater contamination. And then regarding how to do this and how to make sure that you have a separation between wastewater and stormwater. So you should have them collected, treated, and discharged separately so as to reduce the impact of stormwater on wastewater treatment plant. And as I said, this may be different from factory to factory, how it is solved. It may also be different depending on the legal regulations that you have in your country or in your community. And the purpose is to ensure, of course, as I explained, that the stormwater and wastewater, that they are collected and discharged according to their regulation, and that to ensure that the system is functional. So you should code and label all the stormwater and wastewater collection points and drainage systems, and assign designated responsible department or persons for regular management. You should also develop a stormwater and wastewater drainage map with the information of location, uses, code, and responsible person, and post the drainage map in a location where it is accessible for most of your employees. And also take note, the facility's wastewater collection and stormwater drainage system may be included on facility structural engineering or utility drawings. Very often we see this, that you have this available in the factory. Then thirdly, provide training to all responsible persons on the different uses of each collection system. And fourth, regularly check all stormwater and wastewater collection points and drainage system to ensure that there is no mixing or that there is no damage to the system. And here we would like to see the following documentation as well, the drainage maps that you have, and also any documented policies and procedures and regular monitoring records if you have that available. So this was about how to make sure that you have separated wastewater and stormwater systems. And then the next question is, do you have the name and contact information of the offsite wastewater treatment plant? So this question might be a bit strange in a way, but the reason is that we need to make sure that we take more and more responsibility for what is happening upstream and downstream of our facility. And in this case, it is downstream. And of course, we treat our wastewater according to the regulations that we have and with the wastewater treatment plant that we have, or perhaps we discharge the wastewater without treatment according, of course, to our operating license or a wastewater treatment permit. But we also need to make sure that that wastewater that we discharge is also treated correctly. So this means that sometimes you might need to be in contact with the municipal wastewater treatment plant and ask them for have their name and contact information, but actually, and this is a late question, ask them for their wastewater treatment records as well. So that is the reason why this question has been included here. So name, address, ownership, and also if you have a copy of the contract with the wastewater treatment plant. And this is different from facility to facility, from country to country, and from community to community. And that is that sometimes you have a specific a specific contract with the wastewater treatment plant, and sometimes you don't. So it depends a bit on how it is regulated and organized in your local community. So if you don't have a copy, then you probably have some other contract with the setting and with the factories that you have around you. All right, and then you should also, if possible, upload the signed contract of the offsite wastewater treatment plant, and of course also, if it is available, a permit and contractual agreement for your facility to show that you are also allowed to discharge into the offsite wastewater treatment plant. All right, question number 3. Does your facility have a backup plan if there is an emergency situation related to wastewater? And this question is also very much coupled to soil and groundwater contamination. Because if you have an emergency, let's say you have a leak of a hazardous chemical, of a large amount of a hazardous chemical into your wastewater flow, then your wastewater treatment plant may not be able to treat the wastewater, but rather the hazardous chemical might actually kill the bacteria in your biological treatment plant. And therefore, you may not be able to treat your wastewater. So you need to make sure that you have an emergency situation plan and that you have a backup plan for how to deal with such an emergency situation. And then you have several different options. If you respond yes here, you have several different options that you can select. So for example, you can have an emergency production shutdown. You shut down the entire plant, which means that you then do not produce any wastewater anymore. You can also have a holding tank. This is very usual that most facilities have a holding tank where you can keep a large volume of the wastewater without having to shut down the plant, because obviously to need to shut down your production will of course cause you to lose production, lose money as well. And then the question is, if you have a holding tank, what is the size of your facility's holding tank? And we recommend that it should be at least 1 day of wastewater that you can hold in this tank. Then do you have a secondary treatment, any other treatment? Do you have the possibility to discharge to your offsite water treatment plant without having to use your own plant? Do you have training for employees? And the last question then, do you have any other backup process? And so we suggest that you upload your emergency backup process, and as we said, also sufficient to treat the average daily amount of wastewater discharged. And here again, we know that Higg FEM asks you to have quite a lot of documentation available. I know this is sometimes a bit tedious, but it is also important for your own sake that you have these documented processes available and that you have your workers and your operators trained on how to deal with those emergency situations. And then also for this year, we have an unscored question again. Can you confirm that there is no leaking or bypassing of wastewater? So do you have the controls in place to make sure that there is no leaking or bypassing of wastewater? So that is important. And then we have the hazardous sludge disposal. So is your hazardous sludge disposed of properly? And then the type of hazardous waste treatment, incinerated, controlled conditions, is it landfilled, is it open burning, is it fuel blended, composted, or is it used as a fertilizer? But obviously, if your sludge is hazardous, there are actually a few things you shouldn't be doing here. Open burning in any case, you should not be doing. And composted also not, and used as fertilizer as well not. If the sludge is hazardous, it should not be brought out and applied to land as a fertilizer, and it also should not be composted, because you cannot use that compost later without actually poisoning the soil or the plants that you are using the compost with. And the suggested upload are the permits for proper disposal or land application. And then there is also the question about training. You should add the training topic, number of employees trained, frequency of training. You can also do a leachate test, but this is regarding the sludge. It is really important that you know what is the local regulation. They will let you know how you need to treat your sludge and how you need to test it in order to know if it is hazardous or not. And then the disposal methods, again, the sludge treatment, energy recovery. And then if your sludge is non-hazardous, so there is actually a response it is in question 4, where you can say my sludge is not hazardous, and then you will receive this question: is non-hazardous sludge disposed of properly? And again, you have the same list here, and obviously open burning we should never have being done. And again, you should upload any analysis you have, any permits you have, any training documentation that you have. Okay, that was a fast move to the next question. which is the septic water treatment. And this question you will only receive if you actually have septic water treatment in your facility. Otherwise, you will not receive this question. And here we would like to know if you are treating your wastewater using septic before it is discharged. And then, does your facility provide training to all relevant employees regarding the disposal method of the septic waste? And how does your site unload your septic tank once full? And then, do you have a plan to upgrade your septic tank to a more modern wastewater treatment approach? So this question is also important because you actually need to have a plan. The septic tank is not the perfect treatment, and therefore Sustainable Apparel Coalition is trying to nudge you and motivate you to upgrade your septic tank to a more modern wastewater treatment approach. The documentation. You should have some documentation that your facility treats your septic wastewater before it is discharged, the plan you have to upgrade your septic tank to a more modern wastewater treatment approach, training, and again, we have the same questions as we actually usually have since the FEM 2020. There are several questions related to training in the Higg FEM in several of the sections, and we always get the same questions about the training topic, number of employees trained, frequency of training. And then here you can see also that you do need to have the treatment of the septic wastewater. And here are some general treatment efficiencies that you can reach. So you see it's not too high. BUD 40%. It's not really too high. Okay, so those were all the questions at level 1. And once you have now managed to respond with a yes or partial yes to all questions at level 1, you will be able to move on to level 2. And at level 2, we have those 2 questions. The first one is about wastewater standards. And the question is your facility reporting against the wastewater standard? And here, please be aware, the wastewater standard needs to be a beyond standard, so to say. It is not covering your local regulation. So we expect, and SAC expect, that you will be testing your wastewater according to your local regulation in any case. And so this question is about any other additional wastewater standard that you are reporting against. And actually the most common is the one that we see during verification is the SETIHC standard, according to the SETIHC wastewater guideline, but there is also the BSR, the Business for Social Responsibility, the IPE, the Chinese platform, or you may also have a customer or a brand specific wastewater guideline that you are reporting against, or any other. So please remember this. You can only respond yes here if you actually are reporting against one of these standards. So it's not enough that you are reporting against your local regulation. And the reason is, of course, here at level 2, as you know, this is above and beyond. So this is beyond the legal regulations. All the legal and the standard questions are given at level 1. And then if you respond yes, you will then mark up which standard you are reporting against. And then the next question is, have you tested and met all parameters specified in the standard? And you say either yes or no. And if you respond no, you will receive also follow-up questions where you have to add all the parameters that were not meeting the requirements. And again, also here is also now new. You can now select several wastewater standards. Perhaps you are reporting against several different wastewater standards. Then you can select all of them. And you can also, the table to include frequency of sampling has been uploaded, and there is also a new table on the SETI@C table, according to the SETI@C table. And then, are you reporting against these standards, and have you tested and met all parameters specified in these standards? This is just a repetition. I will actually remove. And are your parameter results available in the, okay, let's leave them in here. Because the last question here, are your parameter results available in the standards platform? So some of these standards, they also have a platform, an online platform where you can upload your results. And finally, for the SETI@C, we also have several different questions related to the sample points and the deadlines. So those are the deadlines if you are reporting according to a brand who is a member of SETI@C. Then you will have certain sampling deadline, March 30th, and also the July 2nd. And next question, number 8. So this is the second question at level 2, is about the offsite wastewater quality test. So have you requested the wastewater quality test results from the offsite wastewater treatment plant? So you will remember question number 2 was about having the contact details of the offsite wastewater treatment plant. And here you should actually also contact them and ask to receive the latest and most updated wastewater quality test results from that plant. And hopefully you have received them, and then you can document your request, and also, of course, the quality records if they are provided. But actually here in this case, it is actually enough if you have asked them and can prove that. If they haven't sent it to you, it's so to say you are not to blame for that, so you will still get a full score. But of course, in most cases, you will receive the offsite wastewater treatment results, and then you can upload them here. Sometimes they are also publicly available, so you can actually download them from a website. And then you can even go further and say, okay, I see my responsibility as even reaching even further, and then I go and make an inspection or a visit to the offsite wastewater treatment plant. Okay, and now we are already at level 3. And this is the last question. Does your facility reuse and or recycle process wastewater as process water? So do you have what we would call also a closed loop? And the upload should be records demonstrating closed loop recycling, the list of water reduction achievements according to the location where water is captured for recycling, and then note on scoring. And it's a bit of a tough scoring here. You need to have you need to reuse or recycle 80% or more in order to get full points. So this is quite challenging. If you reuse or recycle 50 to 79%, you will get partial points. If you reuse or recycle less than 49%, then you will get 0 points. But please still consider recycling as much as possible, even if you are not reaching the 49%, it still makes sense. And water, as we saw also in the water section, is a scarce resource in many regions. So it is really important to recycle and reuse as much as possible. And then if you say no or unknown, you will have 0 points here. And I see that we have a question here. Yes, what if I don't have the contract with the offsite wastewater treatment, but just the bill of payment for the wastewater treatment? Do we get point for that? Yes. If you can show that you have a regular treatment of the wastewater in the offsite wastewater treatment plant, then you will still get full score here. We are aware that not all offsite wastewater treatment plants actually have a specific contract with you or vice versa. And so it really depends. We will accept if you don't have it. We know that sometimes you are perhaps in an industrial zone where you have an agreement with the owners or the operators of that industrial zone, and then the wastewater treatment is included into that. Or there might be, excuse me, there might be a consortium of all the factories in one industrial zone that is operating it together, etc. And then you don't have like a formal contract that shows that. But usually there is some document you can show. And in any case, of course, if you get the bill of payment for the wastewater treatment, obviously then the wastewater treatment plant has accepted your wastewater and is treating it. So that is enough then. And then we have also the question here, how to identify if the sludge is hazardous or not. Yes, this is differs very much from country to country. So you need to have a look at what are the requirements in my country and how do they define if the sludge is hazardous or not. And then and it may be that they do that via analytics, that they tell if you have concentrations of these and these and these chemicals in the sludge, then it is hazardous. But it may also be that they say, for example, that all sludge from all wastewater treatment plants are automatically hazardous, so to say. So you need to go and have a check in your local regulation. And then there is one other question. Is there a frequency requirement for testing against ZTHC wastewater guidelines, or is once a year enough? Well, Higg FEM doesn't require you to do it more often than once a year. So if you have done a test in 2021, then that is enough according to Higg FEM. However, if you are selling to brands that are members of ZTHC, they might require you to do sampling and testing twice a year. So those were the dates that I was showing previously. So it depends a bit. Either you have perhaps a requirement from a brand telling you to do it twice a year, or otherwise you can voluntarily do it once a year. And then what if I don't have the response or the test of wastewater from the treatment plant, but I have some tests made before evacuation into the municipal system? Yes, so regarding that question about the wastewater testing in the off-site wastewater treatment plant, they are asking actually for the results from that plant, so not the results that you have before discharge into the municipal system. But as I mentioned, it is enough if you have asked them and you can show that email or that letter that you have sent to the off-site wastewater treatment plant and where you request the results, that is also enough to get full score here. So you are not penalized only because the off-site wastewater treatment plant has not made available the results to you. All right, those were the questions for now. And now I wanted to also give you some more information about the wastewater reuse and recycle. So of course, in a world where fresh water is an increasingly valuable resource, and you may remember in the water section, we were talking about those two different maps that we had from 1995 and 2025, where we could see that water is getting more and more scarce and that we in many countries are using a higher and higher portion of the total available water. So in this case, where fresh water is an increasingly valuable resource, industrial processes threaten its availability on two fronts unless the water is treated. Many industrial processes require water and then reduce the availability of water for the environment or other processes, or alternately contaminate and release water that damages the local environment. And here again, the connection to soil and groundwater contamination. So, and in this case, zero liquid discharge is a water treatment process in which all wastewater is recycled and purified. therefore leaving zero liquid discharge at the end of the treatment cycle. Zero liquid discharge is an advanced wastewater treatment method, and it can be composed of several different steps. Very often you have the steps of ultrafiltration, reversed osmosis, evaporation, crystallization, and even fractional electrodeionization. But it may be another combination of different steps. You can even evaporate immediately, but that will need consume a lot of energy. So usually you actually have the ultrafiltration, where you have a filtration of the larger particles, and then you have the reversed osmosis, where you have the separation taking place of all the salts. They are held back, and the purified water, it goes through the membrane in the reversed osmosis process. And then you will have a clean water that you can feed back into your factory again. And the brine that you have from the reversed osmosis is then evaporated and crystallized. And of course, for me, it's always nice to speak about reversed osmosis, because 36 years ago, when I started my first job, it was at a company that produced plants for water and wastewater treatment. And we produced plants with ultrafiltration and reversed osmosis. So this was the first job I had, and where I had the possibility to plan and design plants for reversed osmosis, and also actually take them into operation. So already very soon I had some adventure in terms of taking plants into operation. That was very, very fun, and also sometimes a bit scary, I must say. Yes, so this is what you need to have in order to have a zero liquid discharge plant. It is not yet so common with zero liquid discharge, and of course also you will have the waste in the end. So you have a salt or perhaps the brine in the end that you still need to take care of. And it's also not always so easy to find a good solution for the treatment of this waste that you will have in the end. But in any case, the objectives are, of course, to eliminate the liquid wastewater discharge, to generate solids for landfill disposal or reuse. And of course, the optimum would be, if it is possible, to reuse the brine or the sludge or the waste that you have in the end, if you can reuse the salts. And there are lots of pilot tests going on to try to do this, but it's quite challenging actually. And then also to recycle high quality water that can be beneficially used then again in the plant. And then you can see here a simplified flow chart. So you have your wastewater, you have your factory here where you're producing your wastewater, and then you treat it in a normal treatment plant, and then you have your zero liquid discharge treatment plant, you have your solids and hopefully resource recovery or disposal, and then perhaps even chemicals that you can reuse and feed back into the plant. And in any case, you have this blue stream here with the treated fresh water for reuse. And here is another more detailed illustration of how the zero liquid discharge works after you have the pre-treated wastewater coming out from the conventional wastewater treatment plant. And this is here where you have your ultrafiltration, your reversed osmosis, and then you have your brine concentration and potentially even a crystallizer. But it depends a bit on how far you would go here. And with that, and there is also, you can see a film here on YouTube that you can watch to find some more information about this type of treatment. And with that, we have already come, excuse me, to the question section. And I see that we have some more questions here. Yes, can you discuss about ZLD? Yes, so we just did that. I hope that that gave you at least another idea, a high-level idea of how it works. And then if we have an RO, so reversed osmosis plant after our effluent treatment plant, it means we are fulfilling requirement of ZLD. Probably yes. It depends a bit on what you are doing with the brine from the reversed osmosis plant. So is that brine also treated? Yes or no? But usually if you have a reversed osmosis plant and we are using water after RO, yes, you are using the cleaned water in your own factory. But what do you do? In washing. Okay, so you can use it also in washing. But what about the concentrate, the brine that you have from the RO plant? So because of course in the reversed osmosis plant, you will have two streams coming out. You have one stream coming in and you have two streams coming out. One is the cleaned water, and then you still have what I call a brine, which is the more concentrated wastewater where you have the higher concentration of salts. So that is the question, what do you do with this brine? Perhaps you can also lead that back into the plant and use it in some way. And then how can we reuse 100% of biological ETP or effluent treatment plant? I am not sure I understand exactly what you mean here. You mean that you have only, for example, domestic wastewater, and now you wonder, well, if the effluent from your treatment plant is clean enough, you may use it again in your facility, and then you only have your sludge that needs to be disposed of. All right. Any further questions from your side? No? Yes? Does your facility have a process to contact appropriate government authorities or agencies as legally required in case of accidental discharge? Yeah, usually in most countries you would have a legal requirement that you do need to contact the authorities or agencies. And then please discuss this question regarding the legal requirements. Yeah. Yes, so most of the case you should have, even if it's not legally required, I would say you should have that in your procedures. But of course, if you have an accidental discharge, you do need to contact the authorities, you need to contact the off-site wastewater treatment plant, and you need to do that very, very fast. And yes, so I actually think we can go and have a look here. We can go and have a look in the module. I wonder if there is not one question where you, here we have the drainage and then regarding the backup plan here. So in this case, does your facility have a backup plan if there is an emergency situation related to wastewater? I hope you can see. Wait a second, I will just check. Yes, you should be able to see the Higg portal now with the Higg FEM and the wastewater section. So does your facility have a backup plan if there is an emergency situation related to wastewater? We respond yes here. And then the next question is, does your facility have a process to contact appropriate government authorities or agencies as legally required in case of accidental discharge? So you can respond here, yes or no. So here they are basically taking for granted that it is always a legal requirement. And it would make sense. I don't know if it's in each and every country, if it is a legal requirement to be true, but I guess it should be in any case. Yes. So I hope that responded to your question. Otherwise, let me see here. Yeah. And then I want to make sure, is it true that for wastewater standards on level 2, we can't use local government regulation? Yes, that is true. And let me go to the how to Higg just to show you. So we need to go to question 7 here. So here you see, are you reporting against the wastewater standard? Are you reporting against this standard? And then there should be a note somewhere that it is not allowed. Let me see, where is that? Oh, that's strange. There is no specific choose. Yes, here you can see. Here it is written. What is the intent of this question? This question is intended to demonstrate a facility's current performance with wastewater quality through wastewater standards tracking and reporting. The standards referred here are industry standards, and the intention is to improve beyond compliance against local law and regulations. All right. So that is the meaning here, that it should not be the local regulation. Okay. So let me see. Yes. And then, okay, a good question. What if the local regulation about hazardous sludge is not clearly defined? Can we decide if the sludge is hazardous or not, depending on the analysis we make? Yes, usually there would be something specifically about how to define a hazardous sludge. But if the local regulation is not clear enough, then you would need to make a judgment call by yourself. So you would need to use some typical values of what would be seen as hazardous, perhaps in other countries, and then take a decision by yourself. That's true. Okay, so I have actually not seen this situation previously. Usually you have that it is either hazardous or not. Okay, let us see. My facility treats wastewater in the off-site effluent treatment plant, but we have a backup plan for production, a wastewater backup plan. Is it okay, or we need to have backup plan of production and domestic water also? Can you explain about hazardous sludge? Wait a second. Or we need to have backup plan of production and domestic water also. So all your wastewater is treated in offsite effluent treatment plant, and you have a backup plan for the production, but you don't have a backup plan for the domestic. That's a good question. I don't think you need to have it for domestic if that is also treated externally, because it would rather be that you have for the production where you would have anything happened. So if you are sure that the piping for the domestic water is okay and that there can be no leakage of industrial wastewater into the domestic water, I think that should be enough. Yeah. All right. Can you explain about hazardous sludge disposed of in Bangladesh? No, unfortunately, I cannot. I am not familiar with the regulation in Bangladesh, but I will soon present you to our verifiers, and there you have a colleague in Bangladesh that you can contact if you wish. So please do that directly then. Okay, any further question from your side? No, at this moment, there seems to be no further question. All right. So in that case, I thank you so much for joining this webinar. Here you can see all our verifiers globally. You see that our team is growing actually very fast currently. And we have in nearly every region, but perhaps not in every country yet, but you see we have a lot of verifiers available. So please feel free to contact them. And in the case of Bangladesh, you can reach out here to Mutakabir here. And then you can also follow us, of course, in the next webinars. So when you receive this presentation, you can already download then the first 3 webinars that we have had. And we will send an email to you with a recording and a presentation deck for this wastewater section. Tomorrow we have the air emission section at 1 hour later, so 9 a.m. Central European time. And then in 2 weeks from now, we have the waste and the chemical management sections as well. And there I see that we have one more question. Let me have a look. All right, yes. So it says here that Mutta Kabir is an excellent trainer in Bangladesh. Yes, thank you for that. Good. All right, and with that, here you see our entire team globally. And now I would like to thank you so much. If you have any final question, you have a few seconds now before I close this webinar. And yes, there is something else here. All right, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you all joining, and thank you for that comment as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a really nice rest of your day, and I hope that we will meet each other again tomorrow and for the remaining webinars. All right, you take care. Bye-bye. Bye.